This is Rock and Roll English. Real people, real English. Here's your host, Martin Johnston.
Hello everyone and welcome to a special episode, special edition of Rock and Roll English, where we are here to talk about football. Yes, that's right. Boom Boom and I discuss the season because we're now at the very end of the season, and like I always say, if you don't like football, this is probably not a good podcast to listen to. Just wait for the Monday episode and then hopefully it will be something that you are interested in, because we do go quite specific. We talk about the Premier League, the Champions League. We talk about our teams, my team being Manchester United and Boom Boom's team being Arsenal. We also end up talking about basically the history of English football, Manchester City's rise to the top of English football, and we also talk about English football in the 80s, 90s and the noughties, 2000s and the 2010 decade, because Boom Boom and I are both English, so it's obviously normal. We know more about English football, so that's what we talk about. But as I said, we do talk about Europe a little bit as well, Champions League, as well as following and not following players on Instagram, buying illegal tickets for football matches, and the greatest ever football chant. So a chant being the song you sing at a stadium. Anyway, here is the conversation. I will talk to you very briefly at the end, but in the meantime, happy listening. Boom Boom Cannon, how are you today?
I'm good, Martin. How are you?
Always fantastic, Boom Boom. Always fantastic. Even more now we are recording my favourite type of pod, okay, which is a football pod. I'm sure there are only about 3 people that listen to this, but the fact that I can kind of say it's kind of my job sometimes, once or twice a year, to talk about football makes me feel like a real kind of football analyst kind of thing, and makes me feel like I have made it in life.
Can I say that if I'm not getting paid, or does it count as my job?
You can say that. You can say that, okay? In fact, the only podcasts of Rock and Roll English that I have ever listened to, except for editing purposes, are these football podcasts, mainly because we recorded them in the World Cup, in the Euros, and England did quite well in both of those tournaments. So I actually listened to them again quite recently, actually, just to try and relive those emotions.
Emotional, was it? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Just to try and feel the excitement again. But this time we're going to be focusing more on things that we know about: Premier League, bit of Champions League, maybe a bit of time, if we have any time, World Cup. So starting with the Premier League, I mean, for our teams, not so good. We will get to those teams in a bit, but obviously Manchester City are the champions. I think were you pleased at that? Who were you supporting, Liverpool or Manchester City?
Well, I probably find it easier seeing Manchester City win the league because I'm
doesn't
a bit
really
more.
Count,
no, exactly. It doesn't really count. So
it's like they've got the most money. They spend loads of money. They got the best manager. So it's not really almost an achievement for them, is it? But if Liverpool win, it's like, it is a big achievement. Also, I hate to say it, if you look at their net spend, they actually don't spend that much money. They spent big on players like Van Dijk, the goalkeeper, but I mean, they sold Coutinho to buy those players, and it would be a much bigger achievement for Liverpool, I think. So that was why I was happy Man City won as well.
I used to love a bit of net spend chat during the Wenger days because he was almost always, he was in profit regularly, but that's less something I can sort of rely on with Arsenal at the moment. But yeah, with City, I can just kind of, it happens. They win the league,
exactly.
Write it off, forget about it. But I would normally be more in favour of Liverpool doing it, just kind of more respect for the club, what they're doing. But the threat of the quadruple was a bit.
Oh God,
Was a bit
I
much.
was having sleepless nights about that, honestly. And when I think it was the penultimate game of the season, Man City played West Ham, I think at West Ham, and then it was 2-2, and Mahrez missed a penalty, and that would have won the league. I actually thought they're going to do this now. There's just something going. They won 2 cups on penalties, Liverpool, didn't they? And I just thought it's their year. It was like the Manchester United one in '99. There were a few things that happened that year, as I'm sure you'll remember. Bergkamp missing a penalty in the last minute of the semi-final.
Rings a bell. Did he? Yeah, no, he didn't he? Yeah.
But there were just a few things that happened, and I honestly thought this is Liverpool's year. And yeah, that would have been horrific because, you can still throw that at them. So like when they didn't, I mean, I don't have any friends that are Liverpool fans, but, I could have sent a message to say, the treble's not for everyone, try your best. I think you had the same a couple of years ago when you were worried they were going to go unbeaten and match the Arsenal Invincibles of 2004. You never want a team to beat your team's achievement, do you?
No, I like the Invincibles season to stay as a one-off, for sure.
Yeah, and so you always kind of have that, don't you? So like whatever other teams do, for example, Arsenal fans can say, well, you haven't been for a season unbeaten. United, we can say, well, you've never won a treble, have you? So it's good to keep that. So yeah, the thought of Liverpool winning the quadruple was horrific. And I was watching that last game of the season, and obviously, so Man City were losing 1-0, and then when the next goal went in, and who scored? Coutinho, ex-Liverpool player. I thought, this is it.
It's happening.
Like this is happening now. But thank God it didn't. I'd never thought as well I would support Man City so much as I did that day. I was actually out of my seat, jumping up and down. I heard Gary Neville, I think a few years ago actually, saying about who he would prefer to win the league, Man City or Liverpool. And he described it as, well, it's like choosing which man you want to have sex with your wife. And,
something you think about regularly, or?
It's kind of like that. And so, yeah, it did make me feel a bit strange jumping up and down when Man City scored those 3 goals, but I was just thinking, thank God for this. Thank God.
But how does it feel these days with Manchester City? Obviously, we've grown up in an era mainly where Arsenal and United were, 1 and 2 most seasons. And Chelsea came along. And then it was City, who are, United's local rivals at least, but
noisy neighbours.
Yes. Exactly. And then, they sort of maybe got ahead of United and won the league once, and you're sort of thinking, yeah, this can't last that long, But now there's just a sustained period of success where if you look at, from an outsider's perspective, maybe from other countries, look at Manchester and you'd think, what club would you maybe sort of see as the kind of prime club in that city?
Oh, I mean, there's no doubt at the moment.
Yeah.
Like if you're going on present, like where they are at the moment, I mean, there's absolutely no comparison. But if you're looking at history, I mean, there's only one option there. In fact, I think when they actually started buying players, I think it was Robinho, and they said that. I think he said he thought he was going to Manchester United because actually lots of people, I think maybe until sort of recently actually, like the whole Man City kind of dominance kind of thing, certainly people abroad, like in Italy, especially at the beginning of the time when I was there, would refer to Man United just as Manchester. They would say like, oh, you support Manchester. Like, I don't think people were even aware, like, I mean, obviously, I think real football fans were aware, but other people, I would imagine, were not aware that there were actually 2 teams in Manchester. But that first time they won the league, we watched that together in Rome, didn't we? So for people that don't know, Man City needed to win that game to win the league, and were losing 2-1 in the 90th minute. Manchester United needed to win. They did. 90 minutes on the clock. They need to win 2 goals, and it happened. And that was the moment I honestly think something died inside of me. Like, I've never been... No, seriously, like, maybe it's just a thing with age. It just coincided. But I think because I was so involved that I've never been that involved in a football match again now. Like, I keep... it's like I want to keep my distance. Like, I've been hurt so badly that I never want to get involved that much again, because that was horrific.
Well, I'm glad I was there for that moment when something finally broke inside you. And you did look like a broken man, actually, after that. I remember sitting outside the pub that we'd been in, not really knowing what to do with ourselves. We had tickets, didn't we, to go and watch, I think it was Inter, Lazio play Inter, exactly, in Rome. And I don't think you were that up for it. Really.
I actually remember saying to you, I really don't want to watch a football match this evening. But we had to go. And speaking of that, Wayne Rooney recently spoke about that match, which I think is true. I actually remember at the time talking to some people in Italy, maybe because these things have been exposed more in Italy, and people saying to me, are you sure something wasn't happening? Like match fixing, like someone throws the match. And I remember thinking, like, absolutely no way. But there is one thing which I just cannot get my head around. And Wayne Rooney pointed this out. Well, 2 things. The goalkeeper on both goals.
We're covering the topical issues in this podcast.
Happened 10 years ago.
This is what people are tuning in for.
It's evergreen, no boom boom. Okay, when I listen to football podcasts, I like the evergreen ones, the ones which are just connected to football in general, as opposed to like. Okay. So there were 2 things. One, the goalkeeper. Both goals I thought he could have done better with. The first one, the corner comes in the 6-yard box, and he doesn't come to catch that. And even the Aguero one, he left the near post so empty. But the strange thing was, Man City equalised to make it 2-2. This is like 91st minute. Then Queen's Park Rangers, it was, had kickoff. What do? You try and keep the ball, you kick back. They just kicked it straight back to Manchester City like that. I've never, I've watched football for my whole life. So like for time I can remember, like 30 years, I have never seen that before or since. That is fucking ridiculous. It's an absolute scandal.
Who was the keeper? Was it Cesar? Was it
the goalkeeper? Yeah. Paddy Kenny.
Paddy Kenny?
If people don't know who that is, he was just a fat Irishman,
Paddy
basically.
Kenny.
How he was a professional athlete, even just looking at him.
But
he didn't
is that not
look very tall?
An argument in favour of the fact that he just didn't save them because of that?
Well, I mean, for the 90 minutes before that, he had made loads of saves. So even though he was a fat bastard, he must have done something right.
He was one of Neil Warnock's favourite players, so that probably tells you what you need to know.
I mean, with the international audience, I'm interested to know how many people know who Neil Warnock is. Generally manager of teams like Queen's Park Rangers, Cardiff, Sheffield United. Who else? I'm not sure. Although I did hear something from him which I thought was amazing. He said, when I die, I don't want a minute's silence. I want 1 minute of Warnock is a wanker. Which I thought was absolutely brilliant.
That's good.
Like that's what it's all about, isn't it? So going back to today. So obviously Liverpool didn't win the league, which was great. And like we kind of mentioned as well, it's difficult to admit, but Jurgen Klopp, I mean, what he's done there is just fucking amazing. And if you look, every player that goes to Liverpool immediately gets better. Immediately. Like, for example, when a player goes to Manchester United now, they immediately become shit, basically. But if you look at Liverpool, immediately better. And if you look at when they leave, if you think of like Coutinho, he left, like he's playing for Aston Villa now. Who else? There was another one, Wijnaldum, that went to PSG. Like all of the, when they leave, it's just like career finished almost. Like that's why I think like Mane and Salah, I think they would be stupid to leave.
Yeah, it's kind of reminds me, and this is now the second time I'm going to have crowbarred Wenger into this conversation because it's my main point of reference. But yeah, there was a period with Arsenal, I mean, earlier on in his reign, of course, but it carried on for a while, where it felt like that, where players would come to us and you'd be kind of so sure of the signings that you were making that like there were some duds, of course, but that given long enough under Wenger, that they would thrive. And yeah, Klopp just seems to have that kind of magic touch at the moment.
I did actually watch the Arsene Wenger documentary a few weeks ago on
I haven't seen it yet.
Amazon Prime. That was a day I was feeling a bit unwell, and Mrs. R&R had taken baby R&R out. So that day I watched the Arsene Wenger documentary, a Brian Robson documentary, and some other football the Wayne Rooney one. So I watched 3 football documentaries in one day. And if you're asking what I thought was the best, which I'm sure you are, it was the Brian Robson one, just because there was more stuff, like you kind of learn more, because that was kind of before our time, 80s, whilst the Rooney one, the Wenger one, you know, it's...
you knew most of that already.
I knew most of that, yeah.
I mean, Robson's time, I mean, this really is now evergreen content.
Going back to the 80s now.
He was he was essentially like the star player and captain, but during a pretty poor period for United up until the end of his career, right? And with a lot of injuries as well.
Captain Marvel. They actually showed one match. I did actually know about this match. I think it was in '84. So good year for us, obviously. I think the year we were both born. But yeah, so really talking about the modern stuff here. And I think it was the Cup Winners' Cup, and United had played Barcelona, and they lost 2-0 at the Nou Camp and went back to Old Trafford and won 3-0. And Robson scored twice. And I read one because Maradona was obviously playing, and they said that night the best player in the world was playing, and Diego Maradona. And it's like, oh yes, have that.
Was that when Ron Atkinson was Manchester United manager?
Yeah, and they had actually a bit before, because Ron Atkinson
I do not
Brian
associate
Robson.
him with Manchester United one bit. Even though I knew he was, like when I think of Ron Atkinson, it seems mad that he was Manchester United manager.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've read probably much more and watched much more, so it seems more normal for me. But before that, he was manager of West Brom, and they actually showed a bit of this because he brought Brian Robson with him from West Brom, because Brian Robson had played there. And they showed of when they were on tour in China, and one of their players is quite famous, and they said to him, what did you think of like the Great Wall of China? And he said, well, it's a wall, you know, you've seen one, you've seen them all really, haven't you?
Good point.
Good point.
You've seen one, you've seen them all.
It's just a wall.
It's pretty different, I'd say, than your average wall. You can see it from space, for starters.
It's just like the wall in my house, which I thought was absolutely hilarious. But suppose onto the Champions League. So this is probably a bit more familiar to everyone than Neil Warnock and Ron Atkinson.
Yeah, we've gone deep. We've gone deep early. Let's bring it back.
Yeah. So Real Madrid obviously won that. How they won that? I mean, I was pleased, obviously, because I didn't want Liverpool to win. But how they won that? I mean, the Chelsea match, when they were losing 3-0 at home, scored like towards the end. And the Man City match, I mean, I didn't watch the whole match. I saw the highlights, and it looked like they could have lost that about 5 or 6-0. And ended up getting to the final and winning it. But
yeah, even in the first leg, City could have been further ahead. And then going into the second, the ending, I mean, the game looked like it was wrapped up. City just needed to keep the ball. So it was an incredible turnaround. But Benzema, What a player!
See, I'm not a big fan
Oh, really?
of his, to be honest. I mean, I don't think he's shit or anything like that. I think he's decent, but like everyone knows, I like Ballon d'Or. Like, I pay a little attention to that, I suppose, but I'm not such a big fan.
More of a Modric man.
No, I'm not a Modric fan at all.
Okay.
I actually think he's the most overrated player.
Who do you like in Madrid? They won the Champions League.
I actually don't like anyone. In fact, speaking of
Casemiro.
like supporting,
You're a Casemiro man.
I don't like anyone. I like Angelotti. I'm saying that with very English pronunciation
Can
there.
you Italian it up a bit for me?
Yeah.
Go on.
It's actually, so it would be Angelotti.
Okay.
With like, you'd need the double T. He's brilliant, but I mean, although I must admit I don't actually rate him as a manager so much either, but I just think he's a great guy. Although he's done pretty well in lots of places, but I kind of think, he went to Bayern Munich, obviously won the league, went to PSG, won the league, and then it's like, oh, he's won the league in all of these countries, and you're like, well, yeah. I mean, if I went to PSG or Bayern Munich, I would win the league.
Also went to Everton. Didn't win the league, funnily enough.
Do you know as well that he wanted to bring Duncan Ferguson with him to Real Madrid? So Duncan Ferguson, if people aren't familiar with him, is a Scottish nutcase, perfect word, crazy person that played for Everton, and is now like assistant manager. And then he was with like Angelotti there, and Angelotti wanted to bring him to Spain. So the thought of Duncan Ferguson at Real Madrid.
I mean, the thought of Duncan Ferguson in Spain is hard enough to get your head round, let alone at Real Madrid. No, actually, Duncan Ferguson in Spain, but sort of in a British pub, pissed and having a fight. That's quite easy to imagine.
He is the one person. Well, actually, doesn't make sense. I was going to say the one footballer that I would not like to mess with.
Oh,
but
mate,
I mean,
you wouldn't mess with, I'd say, almost any professional footballer.
Exactly. I kind of realised that halfway through speaking, that I would say every single professional footballer could kill me.
He's the one you'd least like to take on.
That's it.
Yeah.
Because I mean, he has actually been to prison, hasn't he?
Yeah, for something he did on the football field, which is quite a tough thing to do, actually, given what you can get away with.
Yeah, I mean, I have seen that. I mean, it was bad. It was a headbutt, but I didn't think it was that bad to go to prison for. But
my memory of that is quite vague, because we are now, once again, we've somehow managed to.
I think that was 93. That one,
despite talking about the Champions League final.
93 in Scotland, so I'm not sure how many people were watching Scottish football in 1993. But I also heard a story about him of some burglars came into his house at night, and then he ran after them and beat the shit out of them. So just imagine that, like burgling someone like Duncan Ferguson's house, and you see pictures of Duncan Ferguson, like, fucking hell, we better tidy up instead of like,
lads.
Exactly. Let's just tidy up and leave him some money, so then hopefully he won't kill us. But yeah, so he didn't go to Real Madrid in the end. But I was thinking about this like Champions League, and I was just thinking like, so again in our time, let's say when like United and Arsenal like number 1 and 2. The Champions League just seems so much more difficult to win then. They said this, maybe it's just because the standard in England has gone up so much, but there would be like now, if I think like, so obviously I was thinking like, I don't want Man City and I don't want Liverpool to win the Champions League. Who else is a threat to them? Obviously Barcelona are having a bad time, like Bayern Munich and Real Madrid. But other than that, who else? Like I think Liverpool beat like AC Milan, but that was never a doubt. AC Milan won like the Scudetto, like Serie A. But I mean, in my mind, it was never a doubt that Liverpool were going to win that. Like I didn't even think for a minute. But like again, in our day, like you had like both the Milan teams, which like AC Milan would get into finals pretty much every year. You had obviously the Spanish teams, but even teams like Deportivo, Valencia, like Italian teams like Lazio, they won the league. Roma were all good teams then. Whilst now there don't seem to be many good teams.
But do you think that's a sort of reflection of the strength of the Premier League. In that
probably.
period, it was maybe the quality, the standard was lower than those leagues. So once you got into European competition, you had to raise your game almost. Yeah, particularly if you were playing teams from those leagues. Whereas now, a Premier League team, Liverpool. If you look at Liverpool's run this year, and I think Villarreal, Benfica. I think these teams now to a Premier League side. I mean, it's just obviously a special one in Liverpool, but to a Premier League side seem maybe, less of a challenge. I say that Villarreal beat United and Arsenal in the Europa League in recent seasons, so maybe I'm talking rubbish. But I think maybe, when I say the strength of the Premier League, I suppose what I really mean also is the financial power of the Premier League.
Yeah, because so in those times, the Premier League definitely wasn't the best league, whilst now I think it is. And I do think as well that the two top teams, I mean, even if you look at the Premier League, are so far ahead of everyone else. So far ahead of everyone else in the Premier League, and I think in Europe as well. Although Man City actually lost, and actually, I mean, they both lost to Real Madrid, I still actually think both of those are better teams than Real Madrid.
Agreed.
Honestly, I don't know how Real Madrid win all of these Champions Leagues. They won those 3 in a row. And again, so I think I saw something talking about like great European teams. So you think of like the Guardiola Barcelona team, I don't know, like a Milan team, like from like the late 80s, I suppose, with like Gullit, Van Basten, Rijkaard, all of these teams. But if like that Real Madrid team, I don't look at that of like, oh, they were a brilliant team. But I just honestly think when you're in Europe, there is something about like the mentality of the team in Europe. Like Liverpool have got it. Like they when they get to Europe, they know like this is our stage. And like Real Madrid have it.
Definitely.
And it's just so annoying. But I mean, like I said, I was happy that City or Liverpool didn't win. But normally Real Madrid is a team I would never, ever support. Like I quite like Barcelona, how they do things. Lots of players that come from like the youth academy, stuff like that. But Real Madrid are just,
no, they're not a favourite of mine either. Yeah, I was always, prefer Barca to Real, although Barca recently have been a bit of a mess.
Yeah, but like I said, in those days, like when we were watching, I mean, we still do, but like the Arsenal United days, let's say. I mean, Arsenal, even like in that Invincibles year, like they never actually won the Champions League and never even really went that.
No, that was a big missed opportunity actually that season, because that was when we lost to Chelsea.
Yeah,
it was the Monaco Porto final.
Yeah,
and we had the team to win it that year, I think.
But I mean, even in years before that, they still had a great team. I don't know who they lost to in like 2002, 2003, but that team, because they were unlucky to like not win the league in 2003. I say unlucky. United won it, but they went very close. They won it in 2002 because the Invincibles team, I kind of think of the period as like 2002 to 2004, and then after that, it kind of. But even in there, I don't know who they lost to. But I think maybe I remember you going to a match at Arsenal and them losing 3-0 to.
It was Inter Milan, 3-0 down by half time. It went with our mate Speed, and we got some very expensive tickets from a tout. This was
a tout. I think we do need to explain that. A tout is someone that sells tickets illegally, and normally for at least double the price.
And that wasn't at a point when we could really afford even the normal price of the ticket, let alone the tout's price. But we thought, oh, come on, we're here. It's Inter Milan, Champions League, 3-0 down by half time. Obafemi Martins had ripped us to pieces. And in a way, one of the most annoying things about that was the return leg is one of Arsenal's best performances in Europe ever, really.
I remember that. I think they won like 4 or 5-1, didn't they?
Exactly. And Henry was brilliant. So the away leg is often over the years one that when I'm listening and reading Arsenal content, people will refer back to as like, what a performance it was in the San Siro when Henry destroyed Milan. And all I can think of is, fucking home leg.
Typical boom boom, always thinking of the negatives. But that's what I mean though. It was a surprise to be 3-0 down at half time, but to be playing like, really good teams, because Arsenal at that point were like an absolutely brilliant team. But because there were so many good teams in Europe, I don't think Inter got anywhere near winning the Champions League that year. But maybe that was actually the year where it was the all-Italian final of Juve and AC Milan 2003, which is probably the most boring final ever. It finished 0-0 and then Milan won on penalties. It was at Old Trafford, actually. But that's what I mean. There just seemed to be so many good teams, whilst now it just seems to be a load of shit. I think it's just modern football in general.
Yeah. Do you think there's also an element of, like, the foreign teams also in those days, there was a bit more mystique to them, whereas now you kind of see so much. Like in those, like, teams from abroad, maybe you only saw on a Champions League night on like ITV, and it sort of felt differently to how it does now. And also just like during that period that we're kind of talking about, there were probably around that time, I'd maybe been old enough to sort of watch and really know about a handful of like Champions League finals. Whereas now, the age where I feel like, it's another Champions League final, big deal. They come around every year. They seem less meaningful somehow.
Yeah, no, that
particularly with English teams, the amount that, like, when United won it seemed massive when they won it in '99.
Yeah, of course.
To us in particular, I guess, our age.
And this is what something what I kind of look back and almost can't believe. But in 2005, where Liverpool beat Milan, I say that in the Italian way now. I should still say AC Milan, but anyway. So that was 2005, and it was only the second time I'd seen an English team in a final, which was a massive deal. And I was supporting Liverpool that night. The thought of supporting Liverpool in a European final now, like, almost makes me feel sick. But because it was such a big deal
for an English team
to be there, but like you said, now it's just kind of like
okay, I've done it again.
And just like these kind of matches. And another example I've got of this is this actually was in like 2011, so a little bit later, and it was Arsenal-Barcelona, and I was working at a school in Rome at this point, and like, lessons used to go on to like 9 o'clock at night, and I was doing like the late shift, let's say, and so one student came, and I said, look, there's a match that I really want to watch. Like, can we do this another time? And she said, okay. So then I remember I jumped on my bike, cycled to the pub, because I was like, I can't miss this. So not even a team I support. I just thought, it's Arsenal, Barcelona. Like, I can't miss this. But yeah, like you said, now, like, it's like Chelsea, Real Madrid, like, don't bother watching it. But at that point, and that was also, I think, up until, honestly, that day of Man City winning the league, I honestly
We're back there
addicted. Well, this is what I was saying though. I was addicted to football. Like, it just was meant so much to me.
Yeah.
But something died that day. So literally from that day, I've always, I suppose, less and less over the years. But like, it's just meant less. Like, I would watch all of those matches. Whilst now, like I said, Chelsea, Real Madrid, it's like, oh yeah, whatever. I did actually watch the final this year of the Champions League, so I kind of felt forced to. I just thought it was my duty to watch it, and actually went to Corporal Comer's house to watch it. But
I mean, even Spurs have been in the Champions League final, so it's lost all value to me, that achievement.
Yeah. So actually, you mentioned that. So my plan was to move down the league, and that's where our teams come in. Arsenal throwing it away at the end. That must have been difficult.
By the way, are we going at this speed all the way down the league? Because otherwise I might need to just cancel.
We'll only need to go to like 6th anyway, because then no one knows any of the other teams. I don't think we're going to talk a lot about Brighton, put it that way.
Not getting stuck into Burnley.
No.
Okay.
Although I was happy they went down, because they're just a bit of a shit club, especially when they got rid of Sean Dyche. So happy they went down, but so that's probably them covered now. So we'll go to Arsenal. That must have been
skip Chelsea, difficult. Hop over Chelsea.
Well, we have mentioned
and
them.
Spurs, and Spurs.
Well, Spurs, Arsenal coming into the same bracket here, because for people that don't know, Arsenal looked like they were going to finish 4th, and then they lost to Spurs, and then lost to Newcastle. and then ended up finishing 5th. So, thoughts, Cannon?
It was tough.
But, I mean, saying that, they still had a good season. No one really expected them to be in with a shout for Champions League. It's just the fact, I suppose, that it was there in their hands, and then
the way it happened. Yeah, I think at the start of the season, 5th was pretty much the upper limit of where anyone had us finishing. And yeah, still, it's just pleased with the season. Vibes around the club are pretty good, but
lots of good young players.
Yeah.
Smith Rowe, quite like him. Saka.
Love Bukayo Saka. Aaron Ramsdale.
Yeah, he
great
seems
character.
like a nice lad.
Great character. Yeah, no, it's a likable team, and like so the mood's a lot better, but to lose or to throw away 4th place the way that we did to Spurs was pretty tough to take.
Although I must admit, I love Conte. I just
Really?
think he just takes no shit.
Strange,
he just does not give a
bit
fuck.
of a prick, but
What a surprise! No, I think he's brilliant. He does not give a fuck about anyone. He's like, we're doing things my way. I mean, it's probably why he only lasts sort of like 1 to 2 years in every club, because that's probably not an attitude lots of people like. And so he, I think, says it's my way or nothing. And sometimes people say, well, let's go for nothing. Goodbye. But I just love him. And I honestly think he's a brilliant manager. So if you look at Juve, they were shit basically when he then come and then started that. I think they won 9 in a row. Went there. And then with the Italian national team, they had the worst Italian team probably in the history of Italian football, and I think they lost them on penalties to Germany in 2016. But I remember they beat Spain. I just remember thinking, fucking hell, how is he doing that with this team? Like, they had that like Graziano Pele, who was playing for Southampton at the time, leading the line. Then he went to Chelsea, won the league there. I just think he's absolutely brilliant. Before, won the league.
Before Spurs. Would you have had him at United?
I think he's exactly the type of person that we need, just to like basically give everyone a kick up the backside. And he would probably only stay there for like a year or two, but in that year or two, I think he would sort things out faster than anyone. And probably he doesn't play such attractive football, but
that's sounding a lot like what United thought with Mourinho.
But
Bring him in, he's a winner.
But I mean, I suppose I just always hated Mourinho, so it's different personal feelings. But I don't know. I just think he would sort. Even like Spurs, when he went there this year, they were in sort of disarray, and then like ended up finishing 4th. One thing, I mentioned this on a family podcast actually. I saw a quote from him. Have you seen this about players having sex?
No.
And he said basically players shouldn't have sex like before games, and if they do, they should do it with their wives, because that way they're not expected to put in a great performance. And he wants them to go like not on top, so they just lie there and just take it basically.
Don't expend any unnecessary energy.
So they're not expected to put in a great performance. Footballers' wives are happy just to, have shit sex.
No, I didn't know that was the key to his winning formula.
Yeah, it must be. But yeah, so I think the future's bright anyway for Arsenal. Whilst United, on the other hand, is just, I mean, yeah, I think it's definitely been the worst season. I mean, especially towards the end, like this Ranić fella.
Yeah.
I mean, I had never heard of him. Had you heard of him?
Yeah, I had. Yeah. And there'd been some speculation here and there about him coming to Arsenal, but that was always more, not more. That was as a director of football, like during a period where we had a bit of change in that sort of department. Edu came in, and we were going to get this other guy, Monchi, who's gone to Seville, and there was a lot of talk of Ranić, because that's what he's done in other places. He's been like director of football, or even like overseeing things. So it seemed an odd choice, particularly with hindsight, to bring him in as someone who was going to like get that kind of short, sharp kind of 6-month impact, because he's more of a like oversee a process over a longer period kind of guy.
I mean, it just did not make any sense.
I mean, I must admit, even though I'd heard of him, it was like a name that I knew was highly rated. Having now actually kind of got, a closer look, I was not impressed.
No, not at all. It was, and see, he's actually now not. The plan was he was going to like move upstairs. Let's say
that's the mad thing, yeah.
But and then he took the Austria job, and it's like, well, you can't do both of those. Like either you're doing one job or the other.
Yeah.
And I also read, I think that Austria had like a really good result, and they played absolutely brilliant in his first match. Which, and the whole time he was there, I actually think in the first match we played Crystal Palace, and everyone said we played really well for the first 60 minutes. But except that, for the whole time he was there, it was a disaster. And without CR7, Cristiano, like some people were saying, like, yeah, he's the problem kind of thing. Without him this year, I think we would have been like getting relegated.
So I was going to ask you this, but do you think, is there an argument that the other attacking players were diminished because of him? So even though his performance on his own was still excellent, that the others can't kind of play with him. But
that could be. I mean, because the whole team, there's no denying it. I mean, like we finished second last year, second lost in the Europa League final on penalties. So there's no like getting away from the fact that the whole team has got worse. But I mean, so what are we saying? Let's not sign really good players because then other players are not going to play well. That's more of a reflection on them than him. Like, that doesn't seem to make sense of saying, well, we're linked with another really good player. Well, he might make the others play worse. I mean, it should be the opposite.
I suppose it's a really good player, but is it a really good player that fits into the system that the team plays?
Yeah,
did he fit? And I guess if he's not just someone that if he doesn't fit, you can kind of ignore. If he doesn't fit, he's still absolute like center of attention, and not say for good reason. Like he say on his own his own performance was still excellent, but I don't watch United closely enough to know how the system changed because of him. But
I mean, in fact, the system didn't change at all, really. He just played like as a number 9. I suppose it had a kind of a knock-on effect on other players, sort of like so Rashford kind of move. And certainly at the beginning, I think Sancho suffered as well because sometimes he was playing on the left because other players were playing on the right. So it had kind of a knock-on effect there, but the actual system didn't change at all. And I do think there was a bit of like, they didn't plan on buying him. It was like, oh, he's available, let's just get him. And then there was the whole Greenwood stuff, which no one's really allowed to talk about.
No.
But that's why we're here, Rock and Roll English. So for people that don't know, it's basic. I mean, it's horrific. When I actually saw that, I kind of thought this can't be true. It's basically like forcing a girl to have sex with him. And then I listened to the vocal messages which she put on, like they got deleted obviously, but you can find them on YouTube, and it's definitely him. So it's all just gone quiet, hasn't it? Like no one talks about that anymore.
No, well, I think there's a lot that can't be. They veer away from reporting. There's a couple of other cases actually with Premier League football players also involved in things, and it goes very quiet when this happens. But that audio was absolutely horrific. Yeah,
I mean, there's no. I mean, it's difficult because to sort of give a judgment where you don't know all the facts, but from those facts, obviously, that's unforgivable. Like you can't say like, I hope he plays again, because there's a line, isn't there? Like there's things, like Cantona kung fu kick. Like you think, right, okay, but then there's like forcing people to have sex with you, which is a totally different thing.
Absolutely.
So I'm not sure how much that affected the squad as well. Like, because obviously he that's the thing that's so sad, because he is such a good player. I honestly thought he was like had it to be like the next big thing kind of thing. Right foot, left foot. like absolutely brilliant. But and so then there was that, and then you got other players. Everyone just wants to leave United now. So Lingard's leaving, Pogba's leaving, and Pogba has just been. I mean, we have had our pants pulled down, like. So, like, if he goes back to Juve, so that will mean he went to Juve on a free. We bought him back for 90 million, and then goes back to Juve for free. Like, that will just be. Oh,
I'm no businessman, but that strikes me as bad business.
But he is just though. I actually just hate him now. Everything wrong with modern day football. He just epitomizes. I've also stopped following him on Instagram. So I think I looked, he had 54.1 million followers. He's got one less now. So Paul, if you're listening, take that, you bastard.
And after this podcast, probably a few less than that.
Exactly. I just hate watching him play football as well. When he plays, like for United anyway, he seems to think no one else can tackle him, and he just sort of like runs his studs over the ball. The amount, I haven't seen the stats, but he loses the ball at least 5 times every game, like in like sort of dangerous positions, because he just doesn't think people can tackle him. So it's difficult for the business side, but I'm actually happy that he's leaving. But the only bright spark for United this season has been a Swede, Anthony Elanga.
Oh, for a minute I thought you were going to say Victor Lindelöf.
No, Anthony Elanga. And even more of a bright spark is the song, the chant for Anthony Elanga. Have you heard this, Boom Boom?
I don't think I have, no.
Okay, so
I was expecting a chant to you to come up with a chant at some point on this podcast, though.
Oh, but this one, I think this is the greatest one ever in football history. So here we go. Rhythm is a dancer, Anthony Elanga. Try and stop him if you dare. He came from Scandinavia to be United saviour, scoring goals from everywhere. Oh, it's Elanga.
Good. Not completely convinced by your rendition, but the lyrics are good.
What a song. Like, Rhythm is a dancer as a football chant. That's the stuff dreams are made of, Boom Boom.
Yeah, the original is a brilliant song.
And that literally is the best thing that has happened to Man United this season.
Yeah, they're pretty excited about him here, Elanga.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I mean, I heard him talk. He has got a very thick Mancunian accent. Has he lived in Manchester for many years? Was he only born in Sweden or something like that?
I mean, I haven't heard him speak, and I don't know, but it doesn't surprise me that if he's even been maybe like with the United Academy for a few years. Swedes, Scandinavians in general, I think, seem to adopt the British accent quite. I can't even say accent. Quite quickly.
Yeah, the other famous example, I suppose, is Jan Mobley.
I knew you were going to say, Jan.
He played for
Jan
for Liverpool. He was Danish, I believe. Yeah,
so
is Danish, still alive.
Yes. So we're back to
1980s football. Yeah. He was one of those players, like when we got into football, like when we can sort of remember it, early 90s. I remember looking at him, like players like Ian Rush as well, John Barnes, and thinking, everyone talking about them and just thinking, they're absolutely shit. Like that Mobley as well, whatever his name is, was so far overweight.
He was a big guy. He was towards the end of his career at that point. He was more of a sort of sitting deep midfield, just receive the ball.
I was thinking, how can he be a professional footballer? He's just so rubbish. And for example, even Brian Robson, I remember thinking that, because at that point he was like 36, 37 and not playing much at all. And like when he was, just thinking like, God, who's this? Why is everyone talking about him?
I definitely remember thinking that with Ian Rush. By the time like I was, really had an idea of what was going on in football, he just seemed, past it. And then when you get a bit older, you sort of realise, oh no, he was actually really good.
Yeah, but
you're very much conditioned by the point at which you enter.
Yeah, of course.
And start watching football.
Yeah, but so just to maybe a quick word before we have to go, because I know you have to go. Boom, boom. World Cup. So obviously that would be now, which is annoying that we have to wait the whole summer, and then so it's end of November, isn't it? I actually think England have got a really tough group. There's USA, Wales, and Iran, but USA and Wales, like for Wales, let's be clear, it's their cup final, and America, like the USA, I think are a good team.
They've got a decent side, actually. They do have some decent players. I'm actually quite worried. I read there's an Italian journalist. I'm confident.
That, yeah?
Yeah.
See, I think almost because of the last two tournaments, like expectation now. I actually remember, so when we went into that 2018 World Cup, that was on the back of losing to Iceland in 2016. And expectations couldn't have been any lower then. Whilst now, like semi-final, final in the last two tournaments, I'm fully expecting to get a smack in the face now, like of going back to the old days of like, not getting out of the group or something like that.
I'm confident we'll get out of the group. USA are decent, but I don't know. I know the whole Wales thing, like it's one of these, like becomes more of a derby and kind of form goes out the window and all that sort of stuff. But I mean, Bale and Ramsey, then they're not the players they were, and they're still quite reliant on them. They've got a couple of decent youngsters coming through, but they still seem a bit too reliant on Bale and Ramsey, I think.
Yeah. There was an Italian journalist that said he thinks England are favourites to win the World Cup because of the time of year, because that's when our football schedule gets busy, let's say.
Yeah.
Sort of like towards Christmas. Not sure if I believe that.
We're not normally playing those games in Qatar, though, so we'll see how that affects things.
And it's not like only English players play in the Premier League. So all of these other players in the Premier League that play every week,
exactly,
or more, like 2-3 times a week, like around Christmas, are playing for other teams that are playing at the World Cup. So yeah, I'm not sure if I believe that.
Apparently Harry Kane was asked recently for his favourites for the World Cup, and he mentioned Italy.
I saw this.
Yeah. So unlikely.
Yeah, he said lots of great teams like that could win it. Spain, Germany, Italy, they're not going. And I am not ashamed to say, when they lost to North Macedonia, I was fucking delighted. In fact, I also mentioned this on a family podcast, how I was actually going to make like a Facebook post about that, but Mrs. R&R basically convinced me not to. The way I described it on the family podcast was like, so if someone punched you in the face and you're on the floor,
and that's happened to you a few times, isn't it? So
thanks for reminding me. So someone punches you in the face, you're on the floor, that person's walking away, and then that person falls over, like you would be delighted. And I kind of feel that's what happened with Italy. We kind of got punched in the face last year. They walked off and then fell flat on their face, losing to North Macedonia.
That person who punched you in the face, to stretch the analogy a bit further, you had lived in their house for many years and married one of their family and were essentially family to them, and you'd even learnt their language, this person who punched you in the face. They still punch you in the face though, so
does this person have his own language?
Yeah.
Well, what I would say to that is I was very happy staying in this person's house before and always did support Italy. But even in the Euros, when we lost the final, I kind of thought, well, we lost to Italy, so that's kind of good because they're always my second team. Always had been, even before I moved to Italy as well. I think maybe from like the Badjo times in '94 when England weren't there. But what I didn't like was afterwards the massive negative reaction which I got on a daily basis. So I was getting abused by not only the person that punched me in the face, but by all of his family members every day. So far that even the priest, when we had baby R&R's christening.
Okay, this is now an actual priest. This is not in the world where someone punched you in the face.
No, this is
Okay.
We've left the analogy now. Was actually like taking the piss out of me and like saying, giving me the whole like, like the English fans like beating up the Italian fans before the game. And but it's difficult to say because what actually happened, because obviously that there was trouble, but it was English people beating up English people. So when I tell people like, no, that's not true, which it's not like I'm saying a good thing, because English people were still behaving like animals, sure, but just with English people, so that makes it okay.
Yes. We can beat ourselves up. That's allowed.
And actually, I think so. It's tomorrow. So we're recording this on a Friday. It is actually England-Italy, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah.
But played behind closed doors because of that crowd trouble. Of England fans fighting England fans. But like I said, if you watch that video, you can see it's daylight, and this is before the match, and like obviously because I'm friends with lots of Italian people, and I saw so many people share that, saying look at the English fans like punching Italian fans as they're leaving the stadium just because they lost. And that was what was really annoying me. So like even the priest said, like you just don't know how to lose, like what was that about? And I was like, look, that was just English people behaving like animals before the match. Okay, it's okay. So I was delighted when they lost to North Macedonia.
But you went to watch them recently, right? In the big one, Finalissima.
Finalissima. Perfect pronunciation.
Which I genuinely didn't even know was happening until it had happened.
I didn't either, but someone from the R&R English family, Argentinian, actually sent me a message about it, and basically I just went to see Argentina's number 10, Messi, and because I just thought
he's good, isn't he?
You know,
is he good? I've heard he's good.
Heard something about him. I just thought, before I die, I want to see him. If I have grandkids, I can say I saw Messi play.
I actually said the same to Mrs. Spoon Boom. When once I realised the game had happened and that you'd gone, I said I would have liked to go to that if I was still in London, because haven't seen Messi in real life, so
just to see him. And also an Italian legend who played his last game, Chiellini, who is a bloody brilliant bloke. I just think he's like Bonucci. On the other hand, I absolutely hate him, but Chiellini, just such a great guy. Like,
yeah, I wasn't too pleased when he fouled Saka in quite a cynical
way. Even that, I actually thought I like that, because, like, obviously it was against my team. I was angry at the time, but I just like that, that mentality. But after the game, he's like, let's leave it all on the pitch, shake hands at the end of the game, kind of thing. Whilst, for example, Bonucci was giving it loads of like saying things against English people, whilst Chiellini, nothing like that. Just, we've won, let's celebrate the victory. Bloody good man.
And that was his last game, was it? He's retiring from international football.
Well, he's
moving
playing
to the US, is he?
Yeah, same thing as retiring, isn't it?
Very good.
But anyway, it's been an absolute pleasure. Boom Boom, I know you need to go, so we'll probably do this again maybe one time, maybe around the World Cup again.
Yeah, World Cup. Let's do that for sure.
Exactly. And then hopefully we'll talk about things a bit more up to date and not 1980s football.
We'll try.
Exactly. Right. Well, thanks for your time, Boom Boom, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, so that was Boom Boom and I talking about football. Let me know if you enjoy these episodes, because obviously I love making them, but I'm pretty sure only about 5 people listen. But if you do like them, please comment on social media, just so I know someone's listening. Because have you heard that thing before of if a tree falls and no one's around, does it make a noise? Kind of think like that with these football podcasts. So let me know. I will talk to you all again very soon, people. But in the meantime, just keep on rocking, baby.
Thanks so much for listening to Rock and Roll English. For more great content and to stay up to date, visit rockandrollenglish.com and facebook.com/rockandrollenglish. We'll catch you next time.